Okay, this is a new video today. I'm just making another video. Well, this is a new video from me today. Today, this is just going to be with Halloween coming up. I thought, like I said in my last video, I'm going to start doing like Halloween themed videos. Well, I might start doing Halloween themed videos. And this is it's going to start with wrestling if I continue doing more. And, well, just the two wrestling videos. And then I might do like some of the worst Halloween movies or the worst Halloween villain, the worst horror villains or the best horror villains, something like that, or who will win in a fight between two horror monsters, something of that nature. So look out for that video. So like I said, getting ready for Halloween. Like I said in my previous video, this is going to be my top 10 of some of the worst WCW Halloween Havoc matches of all time. Now, WCW Halloween Havoc was was WCW's pay-per-view event of October. I mean, you will see some of the big matches at Halloween Havoc. Sometimes you will see feuds end, sometimes you will see feuds start at Halloween Havoc. Whatever you saw at Halloween Havoc, you knew you were in for a treat, or you knew you were in for a disaster whenever you saw a particular match that you knew wasn't going to be good. So this is just going to be my list today of some of my top 10 worst Halloween Havoc matches of all time. These are matches that are just so bad that it's scary and they'll just give you nightmares. That's really how bad some of these matches were. So let's get started with this list. And enough of talking about it. So we start off at number 10 from Halloween Havoc 2000. This was a match between Sting and Jeff Jarrett. I believe this was a one-on-one encounter between the two. This was, you would expect a match between Sting and Jeff Jarrett to be a pretty decent matchup. I mean, to be at least 3 stars or something of that nature. But no, this match was just horrible. The booking for this matchup is just, I don't know what WCW was thinking when they were booking. They had all the booking and all that stuff for this matchup, because this match was just atrocious. It was terrible. It started off slow. There was too many run-ins, and there was some of the run-ins didn't make no sense at all. Well, the run-ins consisted of Sting from his past coming in and attacking Sting, which made no sense at all. I don't know why they could have just had a one-on-one match between Sting and Jeff Jarrett, and then possibly have some interference like that at the end. But no, they kept keeping up with the interference from the beginning of the matchup all the way to the middle, all the way to the end, and this match was just a clusterfuck. It was just that's how bad this matchup was. And to make a long story short, there was nothing these two that did that made you even care about this matchup. It was boring, slow, boring offense, and it was probably one of the worst Sting matches I ever seen. And these two would make up for it in their TNA matches. Their TNA matches would be a little bit better than this, but that's not pretty much saying much, because their TNA matches weren't really that good, but they were at least better than this, and they weren't overbooked like this matchup was. Just a truly awful matchup. And I recommend, if you watch WCW Halloween Havoc 2000, stay away from this match, because this match is just bad. It's horrible. Then moving over to number 9, it's from that same pay-per-view, Halloween Havoc 2000. It was between Buff Bagwell and David Flair in a First Blood matchup, a DNA First Blood matchup. This match was just awful. You had two of the worst wrestlers in WCW at the time duking it out for a couple minutes, and the crowd just got so bored and relentless that they just didn't care for this matchup, rightfully so, as these two didn't do nothing for you and nothing for me. One of the reasons why I got it at number 9, and then the story leading into this matchup was just horrible, bad, and to make matters worse, the match didn't even deliver. The match was even worse than the build up to this. And then of course you had some of the over the top booking and everything else from this matchup. It was just truly bad. And I recommend if you do watch this, stay away from the Sting Jeff Jarrett match and stay away from the Buck Bagwell David Flair matchup, because those are two of the most shockingly bad matches I ever seen in WCW. Then moving over to number 8, it's from Halloween Havoc 1990. It's between Sting and Sid Vicious for the WCW World Heavyweight title. This is another one of those matches that you knew going into it wasn't going to be good, but then they started throwing more stuff that they started throwing more fire into this matchup that made it even more worse. It was slow, it was boring. The two didn't suck you into the matchup. The two didn't really do any moves at all in this matchup that made you say, hey, this match is pretty decent. And then the fact that they had the booking towards the end of the matchup with Sting leaving the back, the Horsemen attacking, or Sting going after the Four Horsemen, and then Sting coming back and then getting pinned by Sid Vicious, only to find out that the Sting that just got pinned by Sid Vicious wasn't Sting at all. It was Barry Windham dressed as Sting. Just horrible booking at the end. Horrible matchup, and this is one of the matches that just gives you nightmares for watching it because it's truly that bad. And I recommend you don't watch this matchup at all because really Halloween Havoc 1990 wasn't a good pay-per-view at all. But adding to the fact that you had this matchup, it just makes it even one of the worst pay-per-views ever. And then moving over to number 7, you had Dave Sullivan versus Kevin Sullivan. That matchup was truly bad. It was horrible. Here you had Kevin Sullivan, who was a decent worker, and then you had Dave Sullivan, who was one of the worst WCW workers of all time. And then when you put these two together, you just get a mess, and that's what this match was. It was boring. It was slow. A lot of sleeper and rust holes in this matchup, and I just can't go into more details. Let's just leave it at that. These two just prove that these two don't have any chemistry at all in the ring, and these two should have never gotten in the WCW ring in the first place. That's one of the reasons why I got it at number 7 as one of the worst Halloween Havoc matches of all time. Number 6 is from Halloween Havoc 1996. It was between Hollywood Hogan and Randy Savage for the WCW World Heavyweight title. This Now looking at the names, you would expect a good matchup because these two had good matches in the WWF, but when it came to WCW, these two just didn't click at all. The timing was off in this matchup. There was a lot of stalling, a lot of rest holds, and it was more of a comedy matchup than a regular type of matchup, and it just proved that these two weren't the same wrestlers that they were in the WWF, and they didn't need to be in the ring. It's just awful, and I recommend you don't watch this matchup. This is just truly a shockingly bad matchup. Number 5 is another one of those shockingly bad matchups. It's between the Giant and Hulk Hogan at Halloween Havoc 1995. This was one of the worst pay-per-view. This was all arguably one of the worst pay-per-views ever. And then when you add in the fact that it had one of the worst main events ever in wrestling history, just goes to show you how WCW was in 1995, how bad WCW was in 1995. You had the thing with the monster truck with Hulk Hogan and the Giant battling out in the monster truck, and then Giant falling off of top of a building, and then he comes back to fight Hollywood Hogan, which is total bullshit. And then you had these two wrestle in a slow, methodical matchup, just boring, a lot of sleeper and holds in this matchup, and then stalling. And then it didn't help into the fact that you had one of the most bullshit endings to a wrestling pay-per-view, where you had the interference, Jimmy Hart turning on Hulk Hogan, Lex Luger turning on Hulk Hogan, and then you had the Yeti and Giant dry humping Hulk Hogan. Just showed you how bad this matchup was and how bad Halloween Havoc was. And I recommend you don't watch this pay-per-view and this matchup. Awful. Number 4 is Sid Vicious and Bill Goldberg. It was supposed to be a first blood matchup, but just turned into bullshit. Truly awful. Number 3 is Jacqueline and the Disco Inferno, and one of the worst matches in history, in wrestling history. Just showed you how much of a joke the Disco Inferno was around 1997. Number 2 was Hollywood Hogan Hollywood Hogan and Roddy Piper from Halloween Havoc 1997. Probably one of the worst main events ever. Didn't help that the ending was bullshit, slow and methodical, and just not what wrestling. Just awful, and it just showed that Hulk Hogan wasn't capable of having good matches in WCW. And then number 1, Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, probably one of the worst matches in wrestling history. You had it was just overbooked to hell. You had the fireball, Hogan botching the fireball, the weak chair shot, the interference. This is just awful, and